Trek Geeks Podcast Network and the Divine Treasury are proud to have Fansets as its presenting sponsor. Stay tuned for a special discount code worth 10% off your order at fansets.com. Fansets, our pins have character.
This episode is also sponsored by Science Division, the makers of the world's first interactive Tribble. Stay tuned for a discount code to bring a Tribble into your home today. Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun.
The Divine Treasury is made of pure latinum.
From Stellar Cartography at Podfleet Command, welcome to the Divine Treasury. I am Mike Bovey, and I'm joined by my co-host, the collector that you know that has to have something of everything TNG, and when he buys it, it needs to be complete, Jamie Rogers. Jamie, how's it going?
Really? Throwing shade like
You're
that?
You're shaking your head at me like I'm lying about you.
No, yeah. Well, yeah, I know you're shaking your head at me. Well, I'm shaking.
I was going to say, you shook your head at me.
I shook my head at you. I don't know why I'm shaking my head at you, because you're absolutely right. I am, I got problems. But very excited to have my, my Guns N' Roses Funko Pop with Slash. I mean, I'm telling you, Mike, there's not one better Funko Pop than that right there.
Not so far. Oh, well, I don't know. I'm still pretty. I know this is a Star Trek podcast, so I'm not trying to go just down the Star Trek route, but that Saru one is pretty stinking awesome. But yeah, I do like Slash. I mean, you can't beat the hat and the glasses and the guitar. It's
beat
all
the cigarette
there.
Popping out of his mouth too.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. So now for our listeners, we're going to have to post a picture of this on Instagram after the episode goes out.
I mean, the Axel one's okay. The Slash one is cool.
The slash one really does do
it. He's cool in whatever he does, but yes, we're here for the Divine Treasury podcast. So
yeah.
Why don't we talk about some of the new items on the market? Because there's some very exciting ones.
And some very, shall we say, interesting ones. So first off, I'll say this is somewhat along the exciting, not the that's interesting. So coming out in August is going to be Star Trek Designing the Final Frontier, How Mid-Century Modernism Shaped Our View of the Future. Basically a book about how the original series was designed in the 60s and how a lot of the things that we saw that seemed to be of futuristic design. Now, we're not even talking about communicators, computers, things of that nature, but furniture. How like the furniture of the 3 seasons of TOS kind of began to see its way into our regular society as a whole. It's not my kind of thing, but I do find it somewhat interesting, like from a history standpoint.
That is cool. So I want to talk about the next item, because, the next item that's coming out kind of really brought me back to my childhood. I was thinking about when I was a kid. I used to like watching Sesame Street. I used to think about Bert and Ernie, and they used to have that song, about Rubber Ducky being all sorts of fun. And TNG characters are going to be joining the Tubbs Duck collection. Oh, yes, that's right. You're going to have TNG figures cosplaying as ducks. I don't know.
Not just
Mike.
as ducks, but as rubber ducks.
Rubber duckies. So
I mean, you know what? we laughed about this before we started recording, but I'm looking at the picture now, and that wharf is just cool.
You know, the wharf is cool, but you know what's cracking me up when I look at the pictures of Captain Picard, because it's got the hair on the side. Like, really? It's a rubber ducky. Just leave him bald. You know what I'm saying? But no, they got to put the gray hair on the side. But definitely check these out on YouTube. I didn't get a chance to watch the YouTube video, so that's definitely going to be the first video I watch after we finish our recording tonight. But yeah, so basically we're kind of, these are modeled after, I know they did the original series from this company called Numbskull. But there's going to be 4 characters from the TNG line. Actually, 5 characters. I apologize. Captain Picard, Geordi LaForge, Deanna Troi, and Worf. So actually is 4. So I'm struggling to count tonight as well.
Math isn't hard.
Yeah, no. So, well, Mike, if you ever wondered what a Klingon looked like with a beard as a duck, now you know.
Well, I'll tell you the thing that I see in this that is actually, I think is really cool about it. So the package that it comes in is actually a tub with a cover over the top of it. I mean, that's just stinking cool. And by the way, when you look through these pictures, Worf has a bat'leth. Again, very cool. And Picard has his finger pointing out, like, engage or make it so. Very, very cool. Very, very accurate too with the costuming.
Yeah, and even, I mean, look at the detail on the pad that Geordi's using too. Like they showed some pictures of it up close where, I mean, you're seeing the actual detail of the pad. Pretty cool, right down to the little tail sticking out the back. But yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be a tough one.
The Divine Treasury, where we rate rubber duckies.
Yeah, I tell you what though, the background they did for these toys looks pretty stinking cool too. I'm almost like, man, if they released that bridge set, you know, like as like some sort of like
goodness
bathtub accessory, Jamie might actually, you know, take the plunge on this one.
Oh man, that was
like how
terrible.
I said take the plunge.
Oh yeah, you're not allowed to make jokes anymore.
That was good stuff. This is what happens after 9:00 on a Wednesday night.
I am going camping in about 36 hours. However, I'm using my camper. I'm not using the next item that is on our list of new merchandise. That being a tent that looks like the next generation shuttlecraft. Yep. So on our last episode, we talked about pizza cutters. Well, that same fine company, Uconic, that made those pizza cutters, and they make glassware and loungewear. Now you can get yourself a tent that looks like a TNG shuttle. And it actually does look pretty neat, but I don't do tent camping anymore. I'm sorry. I'm a diva now. I need to have the creature comforts of a real bed and heat and air conditioning. So if I bought this, it would just stay in a box, and I'm not doing that. So
I mean,
you gonna set it up in the man cave over your couch there?
No, I don't know on this one. It doesn't look that big. Like, it looks like you can barely fit one person in it. I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't look to see what the sizing was on it. But you're right. It's 1 to maybe 2 person tent. Let's see here.
Yeah, it's 43 inches high by 94 inches wide.
Yeah. Not for me. So to put
I'm
a little
shuttle bay door. The only way I'm going to be able to sleep in that thing is if the shuttle bay doors are open. That's about it.
Right. Yeah. So when we used to tent camp, we had a 10-person tent for 3 of us, and we had 2 queen size air mattresses in there, and you hardly had any room to move around. You had space in the middle. And then we always seemed to be set up underneath a pine tree, and the needles would fall and poke little holes in the top. So if we got any rain, Sharon would get rained on. It was never me. It's always her. So,
I mean, they even talk about in the description, like using this spacious tent to transform a twin XL bedroom into a fabulous shuttle bay. I don't know how this thing would comfortably fit 2 to 3 people.
Only if you have nothing but the people in it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm good. I don't think it's gonna grace. I know it's a TNG product, but I don't think it's gonna grace the Rogers man cave. All right. So our next item that we're going to talk about, just a little Eagle Moss things, is the Picard Romulan Bird of Prey is now available to pre-order. So once again, this was the Romulan Bird of Prey from the Star Trek Picard episode, Stardust City Rag, made its appearance. Definitely a sharp looking ship. And it's actually I believe it's an XL.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an XL version. So that's definitely a cool one. I'm trying to stay away from the Star Trek universe collection, because now that I'm doing the Enterprise D build, I'm a little strapped for Quatloos here. So, but it's definitely a sharp looking ship, and if I become independently wealthy, it'll grace my collection.
Well, I don't have that problem. So I think, well, if it's only available as an XL, then I may not do it. But if I can get it in one of the smaller ships, then eventually I might end up getting it to go along with the Romulan Warbird that I have from TNG. So talking about ships, Polar Lights has done some amazing quality models over the years, and we're not talking the stuff that's pre-put together for you like Eagle Moss, which, I'm lazy. That's my way to go. My dad, on the other hand, loves the challenge of building a model from all the kits and everything, ground up to the final steps. He just recently completed the 1:350 scale TOS Enterprise, the Polar Lights one, complete with lights and everything. I'll post a picture of that to our Instagram after this episode posts too. So he did that, and now Polar Lights is coming out with another 1:350 scale of the TOS Enterprise. However, this one is pre-painted. If I could tell you the stories of my father going out online and trying to find the exact paint matches to be able to do his Enterprise, it was nuts. So now Polar Lights is putting it out pre-painted. So all you're doing is putting it together and doing the light kit in it. It's still pretty cool. That's probably more along the lines of what I would do, because painting is not my favorite thing. I always end up screwing up the paint. But I still don't know if I want to build the whole thing and do the lights and all of that.
Yeah, I'm really excited about my Enterprise D build, but the thought of that was always my issue with doing model kits, is I was way too impatient to do the painting and then let it dry and then paint another section, let it dry. I can't do that. I needed, this is enough of, at least I'm constructing it, so it feels like I'm building a model, but I don't have to worry about the decals. And that's kind of more my style of model building for sure.
Yeah, my impatience is kind of like that when it comes to model building, except that, building models of Star Trek ships, I always used to do it without the directions because I was like, I know what these look like. I don't need to have the directions as to how to put the thing together. And that never came back to bite me. But the problem is like, as I've figured out over the years, you really should pre-do your paint before you assemble. And I can't do that. So Polar's got that, the 350th scale. They're also coming out with a 1:1000 scale of both Voyager and the Excelsior. I believe I know last year they came out with the Discovery version of the Enterprise. And I believe that was the same scale, 1:1000. So all of you model fans out there, look for those coming soon. We'd love to have you on the show. If you do these intricate models, let us know. And finally on our list, we have new additions to the Hallmark ornament figurines collection. I know there's many of you out there, including our last guest, Bill Smith, who are big collectors of these Hallmark figurine ornaments. And the new additions for this year are the La Sirena from Picard, and it looks pretty cool. It actually looks a lot like the one that Eagle Moss is putting out. So the La Sirena, and it's going to have sound effects and voice clips from Picard in it as well. And also they will have Mirror Spock and Mirror Chekhov from the TOS episode Mirror Mirror. Pretty nice pieces for anyone that collects those. So in order to get into the Divine Treasury, we need to prove ourselves worthy. So at this point in the show, we talk about the things that we have purchased with our Latinum over the last couple of weeks. And Jamie always beats me in this area, so I always let him go first. So take it away, Jamie.
I don't know. You might be beating me pretty soon with your adventure into the Star Trek Discovery Season 2 card set here. Actually wasn't too crazy of a week. I continue obviously with my little search to complete the Funko Pops collection. So this week, I actually did receive my Andorian from the original classic series set. I also received the Mirror Spock. Now this is, I know we talked about last week that the new Mirror Spock that's coming out. This was the one that was, it was kind of a little special subset. I think it was out of SPX. It was like one of those exclusives. So it was a Mirror Spock number 82. So I did get that one as well. I also got the Ahura from Star Trek Beyond. So now my Star Trek Beyond set is 100% complete. And I'm getting very, very close to completing obviously the original series line. I also received the original series Klingon. So those are some of the Funko stuff that I got. And I also did get an order from Fan Sets. I got the Cool Pose Riker pin. And then I did get the emojis pin. So I really like this emojis pin set.
Did it already come in?
Mine came in today.
Mine was supposed to. It got stuck in the mail somewhere. It's in Providence, I believe.
How can that be? Those stinking postal carriers. Unbelievable. But anyways, I got mine today. So I'm very excited about that. I love how it looks. Actually, I can pull a couple up for you. I actually like the idea that he did of, doing all, one from every set to start, one from every series, I should say. So for those of you that don't know, haven't seen the advertisements on fan sets, it's 9 pins in the complete set, and it's basically one from every series that's out right now or in production. So we got Spock is the one from the original series. You've got Geordi LaForge, the one from the TNG. You got Captain Sisko from Deep Space Nine. Catherine Janeway from Voyager. You've got Captain Archer from Enterprise. You got Michael Burnham from Discovery. I can't believe all of a sudden I'm spacing out on the lead character from, I'm thinking of her name, Tawny.
Beckett Mariner.
Yes, Mariner. Oh my word. Love that show too. So Mariner, obviously you got Picard from the Picard series, and then you got Captain Pike from Strange New Worlds. So cool looking pins. I'm excited to see if he does anything more with the emoji pins, but also if you're looking to get these, maybe not get the whole set at once. They released the first 2 pins, the Spock and the Geordi. So you can order those too if you want to just kind of do it on a smaller scale.
Yeah, especially if you're only looking for one character or another instead of having them all. But I, like you, had to do them all.
Yeah. I mean, I know I would do it anyway. So that's really all I got, Mike. So let's see if you beat me this week or not.
Wow, that's a light week for you. Well, I did not get anything in from fan sets yet, although as I check my tracker, I do see that my order with the same stuff that you got is sitting about a half an hour from my house right now, so I'll be getting that in tomorrow. So I actually did not get a whole lot either. I mean, I got a number of single cards. So the big thing that I got was the dealer exclusive Sonequa Martin Green relic and autograph card from Discovery Season 2.
That was the 9 case incentive, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oof.
I think so. So I have seen that as high as $350 to $400 on eBay.
Oh, wow.
I did not pay anywhere near that. I was
that's good.
I was very happy with myself. I was only one of 2 bidders on it. I placed 1 bid and I won it. So
it's funny because that's how it works sometimes. It's like the people that are looking for those particular cards, those particular like relic autograph cards, generally once they get one of them, now you just took somebody out of the market completely. So it's depending on, when you hit it. Generally the real crazy collectors have probably already gotten them by now, got them
right.
Obviously because that set's been out for a few months. So,
right.
But that is a sharp looking card for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't have anything autographed by Sonequa at all, anywhere in my collection. So I said, you know what? Don't know when I'm going to make it to a convention next, hopefully with the announcement of the new Reed Pop conventions with Star Trek out in Chicago next year. Hopefully I'll make it to that. We've been discussing if COVID is not quite as bad come August, September, heading down to New Jersey for the Creation one in New Jersey. Because they, interesting to Emily, they also will have characters from The Mandalorian there. So it was a double catch for her. She liked that idea. Yeah. So I said, you know what? Pull the trigger on it. I have the set. I've been collecting a lot of the subsets to try and do the mini master. So I said, you know what? I'll just pick it up. It's a nice display item. In addition to that, I got a ton of the relic cards from that set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in one order. Averaged about $3 a card, which I was happy with that. So I got Non in her Discovery uniform, not the Enterprise uniform. And then Spock, Giorgio, Stamets, and Culber in their I can't think.
The EV suit? EV?
Yes, thank you. Their EV suits. And then this one was really cool. I'll have to show you this one later close up. Chancellor Laurel. There's actually a piece of metal in the relic piece embedded into the fabric. That was really cool. So I picked those up, and then the only other thing that I picked up to go along with that was so Discovery, with the 2 sets that they've put out so far for season 1 and season 2, they've done a subset of the pictures from the opening credit titles. So for season 2, when they changed some of those up, they put out 3 cards for that. It was the Red Angel, the Deltas on the transporter pad, and the captain's chair from the Enterprise. So I picked up that subset as well. But other than that, I haven't gotten anything else in this week. I've actually been picking up some baseball cards to do a couple projects there. That's what I've been getting in this week. Now we'd like to take a moment to talk about Fansets, the presenting sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network and the Divine Treasury.
Now, by definition, Fansets is a small business, but the service and the products they offer are huge, with offerings for all different types of fandoms, including Scooby-Doo, DC Comics, Batman 66, and Harry Potter.
Since Star Trek is our sweet spot at the Divine Treasury, we can talk about their over 300 licensed pins, from badges to micro crew to anniversary sets to episode pins. The Fansets website is a collector's dream. They release new pins on the 1st and the 15th of every month. And available on April 15th is the micro crew pin of Ezri Dax that was pushed off from the 1st of the month, and also the next 3 pinmojis of Captain Sisko, Captain Janeway, and Captain Archer.
As a listener to the show, you can receive 10% off your next order from Fansets by using the code DIVINE. That's DIVINE at checkout. And remember, if you put $30 or more in your cart, you receive free shipping in the U.S.
Fansets. Our pins have character. And we thank Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of the Divine Treasury and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. So on each episode of the Divine Treasury, we're looking for a collector of all things Star Trek, and we want to see what's gotten them into the hobby and what they have. So our guest today is a collector. He does like Star Trek. Doesn't matter how big his collection is. He does collect things from Star Trek. The other thing that he collects is interviews of people that also like Star Trek on his podcast, the Trek Profiles podcast. Welcome to the Divine Treasury, Mr. John Krikorian. How are you today, John?
I'm doing super well, guys. It's a pleasure to be here, although I'm going to keep apologizing throughout this whole interview that I'm not really much of a collector. And while I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to support Trek Geeks and happy to support you guys, happy to talk Trek to anybody at any time, I don't see myself as much of a collector. So I'm kind of stunned you asked me, but I'm happy to talk about whatever it is that I've got.
Well, I'm looking at the wall behind you and I am seeing stuff that says Star Trek on it. So I do consider that a collection, no matter how big or how small it is. As I've said in the past, my collection pales in comparison to Jamie's. But I do still consider myself a collector because I have stuff. So it's really, going out. If there is something that you enjoy having as part of your love of the franchise, the two of us consider that being a collector. So you are a collector in our book, John.
All right, very good. Well, then I will consider myself an honorary, if not in fact, collector then.
Well, there you go. We'll give you the Ferengi ears to be an honorary member here. So we'll start off in asking you, is there anything outside of Star Trek, first of all, that you collect for yourself that you like to have little trinkets of?
Sure. And it's interesting that you asked this because I would say that while I've been a lifelong Star Trek fan, especially as a kid, the things that I collected, I especially did not consider myself a collector. They were just things I bought because I thought they were cool. I don't know how you would think about that, but I never said to myself, I need to go collect things. But as I got older, one of the things I got very intentional about collecting was something called paper ephemera, which is basically any sort of old paper document of various kinds. And I was a serious collector of these things, where I was someone who was actually going to estate sales. I had contacts with real estate and trust attorneys, people that, when people would pass away and they would, end up with their estates. And they're like, okay, I got to liquidate this stuff because like the kids don't want it. I was like, well, let me go through that and see if there's anything you got there that I might want. So it was very much, it wasn't an eBay kind of collecting business, although there was some of that. It was really through a lot of personal collections and certain kinds of shops because you really needed the provenance of things. So you weren't like buying stuff from randos off the internet. You really needed to get stuff proven because there is some fakery stuff out there. So what is paper ephemera? It could be anything from an old railroad timetable to a newspaper, to a pamphlet, to a map. It could be anything like that. Now, sometimes when people hear this, they're like, hey, John, I got a stack of newspapers in my garage. Do you want them? The answer is I most explicitly do not. And that's because most of the newspapers that people have made and kept in recent history, and I'm talking like since the 40s especially, the paper quality is very poor because they don't take out during the production process some very dangerous, and I don't mean physically dangerous, but dangerous to the paper, things that are in there because they're making a newspaper for one-time use. So I have stuff that's 250 years old that looks better than stuff from 1970 because the paper just had a different quality to it back then. So I have, but one of my limiting factors for this collection was I would only collect things that were related to places where I'd lived or had a very strong connection. So even if someone wanted to give me something, but it was like from, Nebraska, where I never lived, nothing against Nebraska, I'm sure it's wonderful, but I just wasn't interested in that. So I wanted stuff from New York, where I was born and raised, or states where I'd lived, like Florida or New Hampshire or Nevada, or places that I felt like a really close connection to in some way. So that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. I have a couple Civil War newspapers from, I think, the New York Sun Civil War newspapers that are really cool. Original historical documents. Little Galaxy Quest reference for you there. That I really enjoy. I think I sent you guys photos of those. I have a tax map of Rockingham County, New Hampshire, where I used to live as well. And if you look at it, it looks like a piece of art. It doesn't look like a functional thing that someone would actually use for work, but it's a tax map, but it looks great.
Yeah, I was wondering what it was.
Yeah, that's a tax map. And if you look closely at each of the counties, you can see the population and the taxable assessed value right beneath it, which is really wild. So I have a 1931 reprint of the 1831 volume 1, number 1 of the Exeter Newsletter, which was a paper from the town where I used to live. So I have a map of Armenia, which is where I'm ethnically from. That's actually in French, and I bought that for my father-in-law. But when he passed, it came back to me. So that's the kind of stuff that I really was very serious about collecting for a long time, and I have a fairly extensive collection of that, of all different kinds of things.
That is really cool stuff. My wife and I have. We live right near the antique capital of New England. In Putnam, Connecticut, a huge amounts of antique shops, and you go through there, and we've looked at stuff just like that, old map layouts of the town that we live in now. And it's just so cool seeing that kind of stuff, especially over the course of time, and see how boundaries have changed and streets, how things take on the name of important events that have happened over the years, and see what the original context of that is.
Oh, yeah. One of the things, I know this is one of the questions you get to later in more of a Star Trek context, but I'll answer it here for this, which is something that I've always wanted to get. I would love to get some stuff for Las Vegas, for where I live now, but like from the 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, when there was like the house that I live in was literally the desert. Like this house, was only built in 2001, which for Vegas is, that this is an old house now, but right. This was literally the desert, in 1920s. This is like, if you were where I am now in the 1910s, you would be dying of starvation and most likely left for dead. And now it's like suburban America.
Like the Oregon Trail, dying of dysentery.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is there any other items that you collected too, besides, your paper ephemeral stuff?
Paper
Something
ephemera.
I actually have never heard of that. So once again, this is another new thing that we learn, talking to people about their collections.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that I also have, and this came up in the material we talked about before we started recording, but I actually have more Babylon 5 stuff than I have Star Trek stuff. So, and when we say stuff, I don't know how you measure like that, like quantity by weight. I guess I could put it all on a scale. I don't know. But physically, like I was just out in the garage because you guys wanted pictures. So I was taking pictures of everything. And one of the big things that happened in Babylon 5 was the author of the show, Joe Michael Straczynski, JMS. He came out with a series of script books. And so you could buy the original scripts from him. And he had all this supplementary material. Then he started coming out with all this extra stuff. Like, here's like the original pitches that I submitted. Here's scripts that never made it. Here's like a DVD of like all this stuff that, back behind the scenes stuff. So like he came out with a whole series. They had a Babylon 5 encyclopedia, which was essentially, this is the canonical book of the show. Like we always joke about Star Trek canon. Well, in Babylon 5, they actually have the book. And you can look in the book and see what it says. And that is the answer to the thing, So like they actually went through and did that, and it's this giant book with these two purple and green placeholders, it's an important in-joke for Babylon 5 fans. And I have all those script books. So like I could literally go in there and pick up the script from, any given episode and read the original thing. I could see what some of the changes that they made. And it's all his insights and stuff. And I bought all of that. Like when he came out with something, I was like, yes, I want that. And so I have all of those carefully preserved. I did read them. I didn't keep them in the cellophane because I really wanted to read them all. And it was just a great way to revisit the show. So that's probably by volume and weight, the biggest part of anything that I collect. I have more of that than I have paper ephemera, to be honest.
So I'm curious because I am ignorant when it comes to Babylon 5. Everything that I know comes from all of you guys that are huge fans of it online. Straczynski either wrote or had a hand in writing every single episode of the series, correct?
Correct. Even the ones that he didn't write, he wrote the outlines that were given to other writers to do.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I remember, obviously that first season, because, I'm sure John would agree with me, wasn't all his writing because, but he had his 5-year story arc that he was trying to put out there. But the creator, the executive producers didn't totally trust him yet. So he kind of had to do some of his stories, but then it got to the point once they trusted that he knew what he was doing, he did everything from that point on. Once you got into season 2, it was like he was doing everything when it came to writing.
And not only was he writing, he was also producing the show. So he was really just living it, 24/7. It was really strange.
You are listening to the Zocalo cast with just kidding. So that's great because, a lot of us, that's why we put this question in here, because as much as we like Star Trek, there are other things that we all have interests in. And I, this kind of goes along with some of the other questions that we'll ask later. How with your, so Ephemera. Am I saying it right? All right. So your paper ephemera collection, how you said, I don't just collect everything. It's only stuff that has some kind of significance to me. And that's part of why we throw some of these questions in here, because it's, collecting is really something that is important to you. It's not necessarily always, I got to have everything. Although for some of us it is. But it's also about that special meaning that it takes. So those stories are really cool. I like that.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Well, I sent you guys pictures of all that stuff, so you can post it or share it if people might have an interest.
Now, obviously, I could talk to you all day about Babylon 5 stuff because I love Babylon 5, but we're on a Star Trek collecting podcast. So, John,
that's right.
Why don't you talk to us about some of your Star Trek collection? Yeah, and it's really weird because I'm not one of those people that feels a biological urge to have like all the things. There are some people, and and it's great if you are this way. It's not something that's ever lit me up. But to say like I have to have a full set of the Playmates figures, or I remember plates were really big at one time. I think like in the 80s and 90s, there used to be all these Star Trek plates, and they're all great. They're all great, but they're not things that I ever felt like I wanted to collect. I've been very judicious, I guess I would say, in the things that I spend my quatloos on. It has to be something that really speaks to me and I have a real connection to within Star Trek for me to want to have it. So if someone came to me and said, "Hey, John, I've got a friend of mine who, passed away and he has a full set of, these plates, and I was like, I don't want them. I will be happy to find the right person to get those to, and I will help you. Or I can help you value them. I can help you with other things, but I don't want them, right? Because first of all, they would not nearly give me the joy that they would give somebody else. So I've limited my collection to things like art that I can look at on a day-to-day basis that really matters to me. Like just that, I hate to bring up Marie Kondo, but like it has to spark joy if you know who Marie Kondo is. Otherwise I don't want it. At work, I have a couple of things at my desk, and I mean a couple, like two, merely just a signal that, hey, if you were to come and look at my desk, you realize there's a Star Trek fan here. But I don't have like, my whole shelf lined up, all with like models. I have an Eagle Moss Enterprise refit, one of the 2-inch, 3-inch ones, like sitting on my desk, and I've got a photograph that I got. When I go to conventions, I don't do the photographs or the autographs. I don't do that sort of stuff all that much, but we can talk about that in a minute. So I like to collect things that are art related, and if like in whatever limited wall space my wife allows me to hang stuff up, if I don't feel like I could talk her into hanging that up, I don't feel like I want it. So like I have to really want it to buy it. So I got like an Art Asylum Enterprise that I think is around 16 inches that I really like, that lights up and does a couple things when you press on the bridge. It's a personal favorite. It's a -A Enterprise. Love that one. I got my Bob Peak Star Trek motion picture art, the original art that I bought from his workshop, which we can talk about trying to buy that, because that was like a whole disaster and a half trying to buy that thing. I was one of the, if you bought one too, I was literally pounding buttons on the website, like trying to buy it. And like the website wasn't working. It was a mess. I got the Franklin Mint Enterprise, original series Enterprise, D7 and Bird of Prey, which I love so much because a lot of actually what I like, and this is sort of weird because I love Star Trek for the message, but the things that I like to look at are the ships. I love the ships, because this whole idea that like you're gonna go into space on this vessel, and the vessel is the whole thing. If you don't have the Enterprise, there is no Star Trek, right? Mm-hmm. It's a bunch of people sitting back on Earth going, man, wish we were doing something right now, right?
Right.
So the idea that they could be in that ship and it would take them someplace was, to me, amazing. So I always loved the ship. So as a kid, especially, I always collected blueprints, technical, fan-made technical manuals, anything to do with the ships. I was always eager to get a hold of and look at, and just so I could figure out like what are they really doing when they're pressing those buttons, over there on the bridge or phasers? What the hell, man? I want to know how that works. So it was all of that. But I really love Star Trek for the message. But man, the ships just got me completely.
So going along with that, then you've talked about the art and knowing how things work, things of that nature. Was there anything on screen when you were watching Star Trek as a kid and going forward as an adult that made you looked at it and you said, I'd like to have some representation of that, even if it's the ships, like you were saying?
Yeah. I was so into the whole idea of the ships that let me put it this way. When you go to the grocery store back in the day, when I was a kid, they didn't have plastic bags. You got the brown paper bags, which they still have at some grocery stores. Well, we had a ton of them in the house, and I would take them and I would cut them flat. So, you cut down one seam, cut off the bottom, and then you would have like a big brown rectangle. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I liked about the ships was that I could draw stuff related to the ships because it was lines and angles and circles and ellipses, like things that I could do as a kid. I never had like freehand drawing ability to draw a face or a person or a landscape, but I was really good at mechanical drawing. So it was something that was accessible to me as a kid. And that's why the ships really lit me up. So I could draw my own version of the Bridge Enterprise on those brown paper bags. And then I would hang them up around my room, like all around the room, right? All four walls, so that I had my own Bridge of the Enterprise as a kid. And so and that to me was like the basis of the whole thing, was that the Enterprise was not only a character in the show, but it was the thing that enabled all that other stuff. So because I could draw it and because I could draw the ship, I could draw the control panels, I felt a real connection to that. And that's why I always wanted to collect the ship and anything related to it, even stuff that was sort of weird. I mean, like a weird exception to the stuff I was just talking about is at one point I bought, and this was a long time ago. This is before I even met my wife. I might have even been living on the East Coast at the time. I bought, I guess it might have been on eBay, one of the classic, and you guys will know what this is, the classic landline Enterprise telephone, right? You know the one I'm talking about, right? I think it was.
I know exactly what you're talking about,
right?
Yep.
Yeah. I bought one of those and I didn't really use it as a phone, but I had it, right? And I was like, oh, this thing is just so stupid. I have to have it, right? And I sort of packed it up and forgot about it. When I got married, after moving out here to Vegas, we'd gotten a house together, and we actually had a landline in the house, and we had a second floor little office area, and there was a spot to plug in a phone. We didn't have a phone to put there, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to plug in this Enterprise phone because I had it, right? And I mean, sometimes if you really want to answer the phone, you got to have one, where you are. So I just plugged it in. I forgot about it. I would say I was married about a month. And my wife, by the way, has zero interest in Star Trek, in science fiction, in any of this stuff, like zero interest, right? Her boss was trying to get a hold of her because she works weird hours. She's a finance director for a concert company. So like they work weird hours and, she's working all the time. They tried to call her on her cell phone. It didn't go through. So they called the house and she answered like upstairs on the Enterprise phone. And I was in the other room doing the laundry or whatever I was doing. I walk out. She's having this dead serious call on the phone, like, well, we need to press them on the contract, and and like, we don't have enough, and this and that, and I'll have to push the payment this way, and and she's got the Enterprise saucer mashed to the side of her head. I damn near fell over. I was laughing so hard, right? And she's like trying to have this serious conversation. She's looking at me like, you freaking weirdo. You did this to me. Get this phone the hell out of here. I still laugh. Oh my God. I knew I had to replace the phone, but man, oh man, that was like literally the funniest thing. It was like literally the top 5 funniest things I think I've ever seen in person in my life. And there's no way to describe how crazy it was to see her having this serious conversation with the Enterprise saucer mashed at the side of her head. It just took me totally by surprise, and still a very good memory for me. Sorry that came up, but it just
this is why Jamie and I are in our basements.
Yeah, my wife would never let me even. Never mind. She would never let me put any of this stuff anywhere. Like I can only put it down here in my man cave for sure.
Well, that's the deal where I am. You can see behind me, I have these few things hung up. And on the other side of the wall that you can't see, I have my my college and my graduate school diplomas and my Bob Peak Star Trek art. But this is it. This is it. This wall behind me and that wall in front of me that you can't see. That's it. Those are the only things.
And it looks like it's your work office also.
Well, this is my spot in the house for COVID, right? So I face this way on this this table is my personal computer, and I have a gaming computer I can set up here if I want to play games. And then that computer you see behind me, that's my work computer. So I never leave this chair. I just rotate, and it's like I'm at work, and now I'm not at work. I'm at home.
Yep. I've got the podcast side of the desk, and then the other side of the desk is the work side. So yeah, I feel you. And same thing. That's where all of my Star Trek stuff is.
Yeah. So if I had a collection of all the Eagle Moss ships, if I had all the plates and the Playmates figures or whatever, the Mego figures, they would be sitting in boxes in Tupperware tubs in the garage. Right. So I don't know, that doesn't do it for me. If it's important enough for me to want to collect, I have to be able to look at it.
Yeah. Presentation display is so important. I know even for me, like I'm always constantly looking at my room and like, okay, where can I put this? And where can I, because like I do have most of the Playmate figures, but to your point, they're sitting in a box because I really have nowhere to display them because I have so many other things. And that's what happens sometimes is stuff gets put in boxes or in containers because now you don't have, now you have something new and exciting that you want to display instead of it, so.
Now let's take some time to talk about our friends at Science Division. They've made the world's first interactive Tribble that you can control with your smartphone.
We talk about Science Division during every episode, and we've also featured Jay and Kaylia with their collection and to talk about their business as well. And that's why we want to encourage you all to vote for them in the FedEx Small Business Grant Contest. If you've been waiting to get a Tribble, this will help them to continue producing this awesome product. If you've already gotten one, this is a great way to support them. As you know, they've put in the time and attention to detail that you would expect in this for this fantastic product, right down to that Tribble fur.
When you download the Section K7 app, you can name your Tribble, you can assign it to a ship, and you can put it into different modes, such as at ease, on duty, and watchdog. And if you have glommers going around the house, you can put it on attack mode so that when you see that glommer heading toward it, it starts to squeal. But we all know that in the end,
Tribbles are not dangerous.
And as an exclusive for our listeners, you can receive $5 off your very own Tribble when you use the code Cyrano. That's Cyrano at checkout.
Science Division. Trouble's never been this fun. And we thank our friends at Science Division for sponsoring this week's show. Is there something, and I think you've touched on this already, as far as your Star Trek collection, and I'll use the air quotes on that since you don't feel you're a collector, is there something in your Star Trek collection that you, or something that you really focus on when it comes to your collecting?
Yeah, so I would say a few art pieces that we've talked about. I have like the stamps from the Royal Mail. I've got the stamps from the U.S. Postal Service, and I bought the display-ready versions of those. I didn't just buy sheets of stamps, but I have the stuff that you could buy that was already pre-framed and ready to hang up. That's what you're looking at behind me there. So I have a lot of technical things. So like stuff that gives me joy, right? I will tell you right now, the FASA deck plans for the original series Enterprise and the Klingon D7, love them. Would I hang them up? No, they're in terrible shape. But every now and then I will just take them out and look at them. That is how much I love them. And they just give me such pleasure. They really do. I have all kinds of blueprints of things, and most of this stuff is like fan made. I have a lot of these starship books, ships of the Starfleet, Starfleet officer requirements, Starfleet technical manual, of course, but all these other like fan made books and things that were just sold at conventions that you couldn't even get anymore. I mean, there's a lot of popular stuff that like pocketbooks made. We all know like Mr. Scott's Guide. There's the Next Gen Officer's Manual. I have all that. Yep, got all that. Love that stuff. But this crazy fan-made stuff that they were selling at tables and conventions like in the 80s, I have so much of that stuff. And it's just literally fans making stuff and selling it at conventions. And I loved it so much. Even though, you want to talk about Star Trek canon, there's no canonical connection whatsoever. But it's just glorious. And I loved looking at those things. Even though, like I said, it's sort of a weird thing because I love Star Trek for the message. I love the morals of the show when it's really trying to teach things. But when it comes to stuff I like to look at, you can't look at sort of the ethical meaning of, what this or that is. But I can sure look at those blueprints, technical manuals, and books. And I love that stuff. And in a weird way, I think this actually, this is a story I think I've told elsewhere, but when I decided to join the Navy, I think my love of the ship is what ended up for me picking the job that I ended up doing in the Navy, which was working in the engine room on submarines. Because to me, it was just another opportunity to learn the ship, to learn a ship and to learn how it works and to really grok at a fundamental level, like what's going on in the engine room to make it go. And not in an imaginary way in Star Trek, but in a real life way, that, hey, we're going to take this rock called uranium and we're going to put it through some process and we're going to be able to put it into this thing called a reactor plant. And we're going to be able to heat up water and move the ship around through the ocean underwater, which is crazy when you think about it. I mean, that's real life Star Trek in a lot of ways. And so when I had the opportunity to do that, when they put that in front of me and said, would you consider this, doing this in the Navy? I was like, yes, sign me up now. When can I go?
So it sounds like it was more of a Star Trek led you, your love of technical manuals and stuff led you into that job in the Navy as opposed to vice versa. Yep,
absolutely. It's because I loved Scotty. I loved the whole idea. Like I said, I think the ship is fundamental to the show, right? If there's no ship, there's no show.
Now, John, I know you keep talking about the ship. I mean, was there a particular movie or episode that really kind of sparked it for you? Like when you saw, like I know for me personally, I always talk about the motion picture when I was that whole sequence where they're going to the dry dock. That's where I fell in love with the Enterprise. Do you have like something similar that when you were watching, it was like, oh, there it is. That's why I love the ship. Or
it's always hard to go back to because I was watching Star Trek since I was a little kid, but I think you get a sense of that in episodes like Corbomite Maneuver, when they talk about this is why we're aboard her, risk is our business. This whole idea that their mission is about going out there and they're far away from everything. And the only thing they have is each other and this piece of technology called the Enterprise. And they have to rely on each other. They have to rely on their training. They have to rely on the ship to do the things that they're doing and to go the places that they're going. And to me, that was a technical marvel in and of itself. And then as a little kid, when you see the motion picture, and again, this is something I've talked about a lot, so I apologize for people who've heard me talk about this before, but one of the things that I really appreciated about the motion picture is that they respected the idea that what they do on the ship is hard. Like too much of what because I, as someone who worked on a real ship, I know how hard it is. And I loved seeing that reflected in the show, that like, you just don't get in the Enterprise and press a button and off you go, right? When you build the ship, like things have to be aligned, things have to be tested. You can't push too far, which is a big point of the movie, is that Kirk is trying to push everyone too fast. And that's how you end up like things like the transporter accident. And you end up with things like warp wormholes because it's not ready, right? You need a shakedown. You need to configure things, right? People have to know their jobs. People have to be trained. People have to, tune all the things, right? To make it happen. And I really, really love that in motion picture. And that's why I always wanted to know more about how the ship worked. And I just thought that it was an opportunity, that it was reflected in the show, the reality that it would be hard to do the things that the Enterprise or any Starfleet ship does.
So now, were you a model guy? Like, cause I know, cause I loved making models when I was talking about the ships. So were you a model guy for sure?
You don't want to know how many times I built an Enterprise refit growing up as a kid. I would say probably I built that thing 7 times. And the one thing I was never able to do was to get the proper Aztec metal painting, the Aztec pattern, which that's something that modelers know, right?
Oh,
like regular,
yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, the normies are like, I don't know what you're talking about, but the modelers know what I'm talking about, right? It's that when you're looking at the Enterprise refit, especially in TMP, you can see it's sort of that metallic reflective pattern that's on the hull. Very, very difficult to do as a modeler.
Awesome.
In fact, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I literally just had this conversation with my dad yesterday because he's finishing up, or he just finished up the original Enterprise, and it wasn't nearly as hard because there isn't that Aztec painting. And then I was showing him someone else online was doing the D, which is a crazy amount. And he said, yeah, I've heard about how much time and energy gets put into this. He goes, I don't know if it's for me.
One of the things that I sent you guys was a couple pictures of a modeler kit. A modeler book, I would say, that I bought at a convention, where some guy came up with how to actually build the 1701 refit model kit, the standard one from off the shelves at the store, with full lights and sound. And this was in the early 80s, where you had to go to Radio Shack and assemble your own board. And he made the whole manual with pictures and photos. And I mean, it's terrible to look at, right? But I sent you guys copies of that. You can take a look at it. I love looking at that thing, even though today it would be so much easier with a little bit of fiber optic lights. I mean, you could buy off the shelf components and you could be on your way in minutes with much easier stuff. But this guy was like, all right, you need to wire the capacitors this way. And I mean, it was nuts, but mad props to the people who could do that stuff back in the day. I had the electrical knowledge to do it, but I didn't have the patience to actually wire up my own circuit board to do a lights inside of the Enterprise model kit.
So that's me too.
So I have to ask this question, since you're a big lover of the ship. How did you feel the first time you watched Star Trek 3 when the ship went down, was destroyed? What was that feeling?
Well, Jamie, it's really weird because you can't there's no way to say this without sounding old. Kids today will never understand. Back in the day, there was no such thing as commercial-free TV. And in the previews, in the coming attractions for the movie, they show the Enterprise blowing up. It wasn't a surprise when you went to see the movie. They put it in the ads for the film. And there was no way to not be spoiled. As a kid who was watching TV, I think I was, when did Star Trek 3 come out? What was that, 84?
83, 84, somewhere in that
like
neighborhood.
So I was 12 maybe? As a 12-year-old kid, there was no way to not see the ads. And so you knew doggone well before you went into the film that something bad was going to happen to the Enterprise. And the only question was, is it going to be like a fake out, here's a simulation of what will happen if the Klingons do something, sometimes they do stuff like that.
Like Star Trek 2 was. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the whole fake out at the front of Star Trek 2. Right. But they'd already done that. So you'd think, well, they're not going to do it again. Right. So it was a gut punch. And part of that, and God, I always hate to get into talk like this because I feel like I'm comparing, but I'm not. When you grow up with the ship and you're with it for that period of time, I don't think that there can be a comparison in later Star Treks, right? Did I feel the same way about the D? No. When I saw it crash, I was like, oh, that's too bad. Because first of all, the D just didn't hold that place for me that the original ship does, because I hadn't been with it for as long. I grew up with that other ship. And so it was a part of my childhood. And so for me, there's just no way to compare the gut punch. And I feel like in a lot of modern shows, and this is not a critique of Star Trek in particular, I feel like they want to get there a lot faster. And it's not the kind of thing you can short circuit. You have to sit with it and let it become a part of you for you to have that emotional feeling if something bad happens. That's my feeling on it. And so the level of gut punch that I felt from that was far beyond anything I'd ever felt. And it's because it had been part of my life for so long in such a fundamental way.
I mean, as many people know, I'm a TNG guy. I love TNG, but I love the movies and I love the original series as well. And to your point, I didn't feel the same way about even though I'm a TNG guy, like that's the show I grew up on, love it. I didn't feel the same way about the D going down as I did about the Enterprise in Star Trek 3. That still affects me, that ship, because to your point, that was part of the show. It was like the main character, and to me, it took such a much more prominent place in the original series than it did in Next Generation. To me, Next Generation was a lot more about the relationships between the characters, but like the Enterprise in the original series, it was a main character, and the show really revolved around that. So I agree with you. I felt the exact same way. I'm always curious as to how people felt about that moment. I've heard Bill talk about it before and things like that, but yeah, I don't know. That's how I felt.
I agree with both of you, and especially what you're commenting on there, Jamie. And for me, I think the thing that really brought it out, going back to one of the other things you talked about, John, was motion picture. People want to complain up and down about the 15-minute fly around of the ship, but
6 minutes.
I know.
It was just 6 minutes.
Really.
Calm down.
I know. And it's like, give me a break. It's not that long, first of all. And second
of all, longer going through V'ger than they did going around.
Right.
I've ordered fast food that took longer to get up to the counter than 6 minutes.
And that is one of my favorite parts of that movie, is seeing the intricate details of that ship. And it's like seeing all of that. And then, in real time, it was 5 years later, they do that on screen. For me growing up, I saw one and then I saw the other one, not that far between. And yeah, it's like, oh, we've got all this detail and now we're trashing it. It really hurt. And even though, TNG seemed to be more about the characters than the ship itself. And so you didn't have that. And Deep Space Nine, same thing. You lose a Defiant at the end of season 7 and they very quickly replace it. It didn't hold the same. It didn't hold the same water for me.
Well, there was so much more.
Ship.
Well, I was going to say too, there was so much more at stake at the end of Star Trek 3 than I felt like at the end of Generations. At the end of Generations, it's like, all right, they're going to have another movie. There are a lot more letters of the alphabet, like Picard said, so, but you didn't, where the characters were at the end of Star Trek 3, like you had no idea what was going to happen with Spock. You had no idea, like they may be banned from Starfleet. There was a lot at stake at the end of Star Trek 3 that, like I said,
can we just point out difference? Can we just point out the fact that Kirk lost his son and his ship all within 15 minutes of each other? Right.
And wasn't sure about his best friend either.
And all in an effort to try underscore in italics to try to save his friend. I mean, it was a remarkable moment in the show, broadly speaking. And I think that it was an emotional gut punch for me that I don't think has ever been surpassed for me in Trek in a lot of ways.
I think not enough credit is given to all of that because, it's the whole odd numbered movie syndrome that people talk about. And, 1 wasn't that great and 3 isn't good. And,
I'd only heard about that. I'd only heard that Star Trek 3 was not considered to be a good film until a few years ago. I was like, really? I had never heard that before until just now.
I know Jamie and I both love it. It's like one of our favorites. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen Star Trek 3 more than I've seen I say more than I've seen any other movie, for the simple fact of that was, I think, one of the first movies I saw on TV, like live TV. Like I remember it being like the ABC, Sunday night movie, and we taped it and like I watched it over and over. But like the whole sequence when they're like stealing the Enterprise, like the music and that, I watched that sequence over and over. I love that. I love that sequence. Even though I know they're going to get through the space dock door, I still love that suspense of trying to escape the space dock door. I love it.
I think part of the reason that it's so good is because we all love to hate James B. Sikking as captain of the Excelsior, right?
Yes.
He's just such a great. He does so much with so little, and he's carrying around that little mace that you just like want to grab and like doink him on the head with it. It's glorious. That's a prop I'd love to get.
Yeah, there you go.
Man, I could talk about this for hours, but I mean, obviously we got to get back on task here. So, something I wanted to ask you too, John, is, I always love to tell stories about trying to collect how I put some of my collection together. Sometimes we do things like buying in bulk to get one particular item. Do you have any good stories of, putting together some of the pieces of your collection?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer this in a really obtuse way, Jamie. It's a great question, and I saw it on the outline, and I had to think about it quite a bit because, like I said, I'm not that guy that's like I really need like the armrest, the left armrest from the Enterprise D, to complete my bridge recreation. I'm not that guy. So, but when I did think about it, really what I collect when it comes to Star Trek is I collect experiences much more than the things. And I think that I hate to sound so self-referential, but it really my podcast is part of that, which is that I want to collect these experiences of talking with other fans about why the show is so great. And it's also why when you look at how people go to conventions and fan gatherings, sometimes you'll have people that will spend the entire convention in lines for photo ops and for autographs. And I rarely do that. For the times that I have done it is because I want to support the actors. Like I have a bunch of Discovery photo ops with some of the bridge crew because I feel like they never got enough credit and I wanted to support them directly. And so I bought photo ops with them. And I even had a friend who came with me to do it just because I wanted to get them. But I didn't even pick up a physical photo. I just have the digital one, but I don't want to spend my convention experience in lines. I want to spend it with the other fans. And so when it comes to like stories of collecting, that's really the collection that I want. Is I want to talk to other fans and I want to understand their experiences. I want to understand in some way why the show is such a cultural phenomenon in a lot of ways. It's something I still haven't figured out. And that's kind of what I'm after when I interview people. And I also want to understand in a way from the collection angle, like what is it about these things that gives them such joy? There's a sci-fi nerd bar here in Las Vegas called Millennium Fandom, and they do a lot of Star Trek stuff. And it's a great place. And if you're ever in Vegas, I would heartily recommend a visit over there. They do Star Trek events from time to time, and they have like some pieces from the Star Trek experience, like original items that they were able to get and put in the bar. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, I mean, they don't look that great when you get up close and look at them, a lot of these items, because they were meant to be only looked at from a certain angle for a certain period of time, right? And I'm like, why does this excite people, So I think it's really about the art of collecting for me is about these experiences. And I'll give you an example that's going on right now. And this is going to take a turn, but I'll bring it back to Star Trek in a second. So my mom passed away in the summer of 2019, and right before the Star Trek convention. So I was going to go to the convention, and I was expecting to see everybody, and then I wasn't there. And people were like, "Where were you?" It's because my mom passed away right before the convention, so I had to deal with that. And what had happened was my wife and I were cleaning out her house, and there was just so much stuff, and we just decided, you know what, like, we got to purge. Like, there's just so much stuff in this house. I am still, and it's like what, summer 2019. It's now winter 2021. I am still working my way through all the soap that we took out of her house. And she wasn't a hoarder. She's had a lot of soap, So we decided to purge. And so I was doing a contest on my show for these Kobayashi Maru questions, which is this little feature that I have at the end of my show. And I said, I'm going to send you some prizes because I decided to purge my Star Trek collection. And I said, if it's not something that brings me joy, I'm getting rid of it. And I got more joy out of selecting, packing up, and sending those things to people than I did by having them. As I shipped that stuff out, it was like a kid on Christmas, except I was giving stuff away. I wasn't getting stuff. And, when people are doing contests, normally like you'll get a comm badge and some stickers. No, this is like autographed, like with certificate of authenticity, Star Trek actor stuff, new inbox toys and collectibles, things you can't buy in stores anymore. That's the kind of stuff I was giving away. And that experience for me is probably one of the most fun things that happened since convention shut down in Star Trek fandom for me, was giving away stuff out of my collection. So when you talk about the art of collecting, that's the stuff that really matters to me, is the experiences with other people, not so much the stuff. I realize that probably wasn't what you were expecting, but it's something that really matters to me.
I love that because you and I had this conversation just before we started rolling. It's like some people think that collecting is all about something that you can put on a shelf or hang from your wall, but it doesn't always have to be tangible. It can be these experiences, these memories. While we were talking about Star Trek 3, I was thinking to myself, hey, you know what? We've all collected it up here as to how we feel about this. We had Jim Morehouse on, and he was saying one of his favorite collectibles, and again, I'm going to use the air quotes there, collectibles, it was his experience getting to be on Enterprise. And he's like, all I have is the memory of it. I didn't get to take home a uniform. I didn't get to take home something from the set, just the fact that I was on there.
Yeah.
And that is just as much a collectible, as far as Jamie and I are concerned, as putting ships on a shelf or keeping books or frames or anything like that. Being able to have something that, like you said, brings you joy, that you can talk about that's related to this franchise. Hey, that's a collectible to me.
Yeah, I got such a thrill. Actually, the biggest thrill for me was actually seeing the pictures that people posted as they opened up the boxes and saw what they got. Because I didn't tell them what was going to be in there. I just said, I'm going to send you a box of Star Trek loot. And they didn't know what they were getting. And so 3 of the 4 boxes have gotten where they were going. One of them is going international. So that still hasn't gotten where it's going yet. But when it gets there, and hopefully the person who gets it will post something, I cannot describe to you how much pleasure it gave to me to see people get the stuff that they will enjoy more than me.
Our final stage is our awards section of the show, where our guest evaluates their collection and is able to rate what their favorite parts of it are. So our first award is the Kivas Faggo Award, which goes to the top collectible that eludes you. So John, despite what you call a small collection, is there something that you would like to add to the walls around you that you just have not been able to pull the trigger on yet?
Yeah, so there's 2 things, actually. One is probably, I think anybody who collects anything of any kind always has a story about the thing that they had that they no longer have, that they wish they could get back. And for me, it is the 1979 USS Enterprise Cutaway poster. Now, I think there's been recreations of this, and I think that there's some knockoffs out there. But I mean, the original 1979 Enterprise Cutaway poster, I think it was continued to be made right into the early 80s. I must have had like 3 copies of that, and I have no idea where they went. And I would love to get an original of that, not a remake, but an original high quality, you know, not ripped, torn or shredded, you know, but like an original high quality one of that. The other thing is one of my earliest Star Trek memories, and I've talked about this elsewhere, was my mom, she watched the show, the original show in the 60s. And when I was a kid, I might have been 7, 8, 9. And I begged her to take me into Manhattan because I grew up in New York. I begged her to take me into Manhattan to see a Star Trek convention, to go to one of the early creation conventions, and at the Statler, or it might have been the Penta. I don't remember, but it was one of the early Star Trek conventions. And one of the earliest memories I have is seeing Leonard Nimoy reciting his poetry in the convention. And we walked around the vendor's room, and I bought some of that stuff that I shared with you, some of those manuals and books and things. But the one thing that I absolutely ugly cried, begged my mom for, was the AMT Ertl Enterprise 1701 bridge model kit. And I saw that there in the vendor's room, and I was like, I must have this, and she's like, why do you want this? This is ridiculous. I'm not going to buy that. And I was like, please, Mom, please. And she didn't buy it for me, but I ended up scraping up enough money to buy one. And I put it together, and my modeling skills were not where they should have been to do that model kit. And so while I could right now go on eBay and buy them, they are available, right? I know that I would have to buy 2, because one, I would keep new in box, and I'd be putting that other one together, but I'm hesitant to do it because I would become a crazy person. And I would be looking for the exact right shade of orange, like that burnt orange color. And then I'd how do I get the right sort of matte for this, or like the handles or that color? And I know that it would be a boondoggle, and I would go crazy trying to assemble this thing. And if I made a mistake, I wouldn't forgive myself. So I know that I could go buy it, but I'm hesitant because if I bought it, I know it would just be like an all-consuming thing. So I'm hesitant to pull the lever on it.
I think I'm just going to buy it for you, John, just put you down like a sick dog.
Oh. My wife would be calling you up, man. She'd be like, what are you doing?
Well, and I will have to confess here, my father has that bridge set.
I was just going to say that. I think that was the one that he has.
He has it in box. And he is that crazy person who is online. He's been working with modelers across the country, trying to get the right paint schemes. He's gone so far as to, there's somebody out there that makes polymer molds of the characters in the exact scale to sit on the bridge at their respective positions. Right down to the point of, on the uniform, the Starfleet emblem is slightly raised off the chest, like it would be if it was sewn onto a uniform.
Nice.
So, and he has them. He's just waiting to get all of his paints perfect so that he can work on it.
See, the other problem I would have with this is that, while at one time I was very active in modeling, it's been so long that I would have to go out and buy a bunch of other models just to put together to get my skills back to where they were, because I wouldn't even want to tackle that until I felt competent to do it. So it wouldn't even be a matter of trying to put that together. It'd be like, oh, no. I have to go back to, elementary school, I can't jump in and, I got to build 5 other model kits, just to get to the level where I would feel like I'd want to do it. So that's another reason that I'm hesitant to do it. It's because of that.
Well, I walked in. Oh, go ahead, Jamie.
No, I was going to say the one nice thing, though, at least, because I remember when I would try to put models together when I was a kid, I could never find whatever the color set it needed. You go to your local Benny's or, these local shops, and they never had the colors you needed. I mean, at least now you can pretty much find anything you want on the internet. So, I mean, that's the one nice thing about doing models now.
Yeah, you can order whatever Pantone colors you want for model paint. You can get it.
I walked into his office last night. He was actually working on a model, and he had his headgear on with his ultra magnifiers so that he could see what was going on.
That's why I'm hesitant to do it, because I know myself, and if I actually tried to do it, it would become an all-encompassing thing. And my wife is already like with the podcasting and everything else. I just don't know if I could take on another thing.
So what we're hearing here is John is a collector with a conscience.
Let's put it this way. I try to be very moderate in my indulgences. And I think part of being an evolved person is trying to make intelligent decisions about things that would be bad for you. So I just know that would be bad for me.
All right, let's go on to our next award, the Grand Nagis Award. So this would be the most valuable item from your collection. So John, what's the most valuable item from your collection?
So, I've never actually sat down and tried to put dollar values on anything. I like my son collects Pokemon cards, and he can tell you exactly what the value is of all his cards, because there's a grading scheme and there's like a whole matrix of this. I've never tried to evaluate anything, but if you were to ask me what's the thing that's probably worth the most that I could get the most money for, given the status of everything, I would probably have to say it's probably this thing right over my shoulder right there. And that's my original Lee Sargent Klingon chef art, because it's one of a kind. It's one of a kind. It's an original Lee Sargent, which he sent me because he dared me on Twitter to sing Klingon opera on Twitter, which I did. And so you can find, if you search around, a video of me singing Klingon opera. And he's like,
it is worth this. It is worth the look.
It is not worth any. No one should look at that for any reason. But if you want to indulge yourself, you can find it. And so when I did that, he's like, send me your address. I'm going to send you my original art because I love Klingon Chef from Deep Space Nine. And I bought the Klingon Chef shirt from him, and I took a picture of myself wearing it. And I was like, I feel like singing Klingon opera. And that's why he's like, I dare you. Right. So that's why I did that. And then he sent it to me. So that right there is probably what I would consider to be the most valuable thing. I have no idea what that means as far as value. Is it worth $50, $100? I couldn't even tell you, or some vast amount of money. Couldn't tell you. But off the top of my head, that is probably the thing I would say. Maybe that or this other thing right here, which is the original Spock art that I bought from Shop Live Long and Prosper.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I love that Spock piece. So can you tell me where that came from?
Yeah, it came from Leonard Nimoy's family business. His family business is Shop LLAP. So that's actually run by his family. And they had a booth at Star Trek Las Vegas, I want to say 3 years ago. And they may have had others, I don't know, but they were definitely there 3 years ago. And they were showing this, and they said that this is an original piece that shows all the original series and some of the movie Spocks in all of his various outfits. And they had an artist in Spain who is making every one of them. There's only 100 in existence, and they're all individually numbered. So that's number 5. And I don't even remember what it cost me. I mean, it wasn't some $50 thing. It was significantly more than that. But when I saw the sample that they had there at the booth, I was like, I have to have that, because I love Mr. Spock in all of his incarnations. And the art was just so good and so high quality that I just said, I really have to have this. I mean, it wasn't something that was mass produced. It was really something that was, and I hate to use this word because it's hackneyed in a way, but artisanal, handcrafted, and it was about something in Star Trek that spoke to me, which is the character of Mr. Spock, who's very special to me. So just having that and looking at it gives me such pleasure every day. And it's right in front of my work computer. So right as I'm working, I can look up and see Spock every day. And that just pleases me to no end.
That is a very cool piece, and I like the story behind it as well. So our final award then is the Resican Flute Award. Just like Picard at the end of The Inner Light gripping that flute, we want to know what collectible of yours has the most sentimental value to you.
Sure. I'm going to give you 2. I'll give you a Star Trek example, and I'll give you a non-Star Trek example. So my Star Trek example, is something that's not even Star Trek really. It's Star Trek adjacent, but it's the playbill from A Christmas Carol, from when I got to see Sir Patrick do his one-man show on Broadway in the 90s. I was in the Navy at the time. I had gone home for Christmas. I was able to score some leave, which was unusual. And I went home, and my folks had suggested it, and which was weird because they were not into this like I was. And we went into Manhattan, and I got a chance to see Sir Pat on Broadway do his one-man show. And I have that original playbill. And it's not just a matter of having the playbill. It's the fact that I was there and I got to see it. I wouldn't have any interest in that. If someone said, "Oh, I have one of those," I don't care. It's that it was the one that was given to me going into the theater. That's the thing that's most special to me in my collection. The most sentimental value is because it's a chance to see a wonderful actor in person doing acting. It's one thing to go see them at a convention and just to sort of meet them, but to actually see them perform something, to me, just brought it to a whole next level. So that, and I know he doesn't do autographs anymore, but if I was to ever get an autograph from Patrick Stewart, that would be the thing I would want him to autograph. The second thing is not from Star Trek, but it's sci-fi, and it's that it's something from Babylon 5, which is something we talked about a couple times here on the show. Back in the 90s, when the show was on the air, I was living in New Hampshire. Actually went to school there. The University of New Hampshire was where I did my undergraduate. And so I was living in Exeter, New Hampshire, and I wrote a fan letter to an actor on the show. The Londo Mollari character was played by Peter Jurasik. So I wrote him a letter saying, I love what you do on the show. I love your character, the pathos that your character has. It's amazing. It's just glorious. Keep up the great work. That's literally, it was like 5 sentences, right? And this was in the days of sending paper mail, right? You didn't really email anybody. So I sent that off to him, and I had forgotten all about it. And I'm watching Babylon 5 at home on TV in my little apartment in Exeter, New Hampshire. It was a Sunday afternoon, because that's when it was on. And the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and somebody asking for me. And I'm like, yeah, who's this? They're like, this is Peter Jurasik. I'm an actor. You wrote me a letter. I was like, what? He says, I saw your return address. My sister lives up the block from you. I'm over at her house. I want to come by and give you an autograph photo. And I was like, he says, what are you doing right now? I forgot this part. I'm screwing up the story. He says, what are you doing right now? I said, I'm actually watching Babylon 5. And I hear him put his hand up things. He says he's watching the show right now. And like he's talking to the other people in the room. And I hear like laughter and uproarious comments in the background. And I was like, is someone putting me on? He's like, no, I'm really up the street. I'm from New Hampshire. And my sister lives up the block, and I want to come by and give you this, And I was like, sure. So he came to my house, he spent, I want to say maybe 10 minutes, he showed up with a cocktail in his hand, which if you know the character, that's like right on the money. But he showed up at my house. He hung out for about 10 minutes. He gave me an autograph photo. And if you look at the photos that I sent you guys, he gave me my letter back with the postmark on it, the stamped and postmarked, the proof that I mailed it. And he wrote on the back while visiting a fan at his house, and he signed and dated it. So not only do I have proof
so awesome
that I met the guy, I got proof he came to my house. So that, an autograph photo of a celebrity, right? So what? But the guy came to my house. Does anything match that, right?
No.
So that to me is like one of the sentimental A+ items in my collection, without a doubt.
This is why I love doing this show. Hearing a story like that. I have a story kind of similar with Patrick Stewart, but not anything like that. Patrick Stewart never came to my house,
or called you.
Yeah, or called me. But no, this is why I love doing this show, is hearing stuff like that. Like that's a great story. That's awesome.
The funny part was I actually knew who his sister was because we lived really close to each other, and it's not the biggest town in the world, but I've been doing some stuff in the community. I was working on the town Christmas parade, and we'd actually met, like, I wouldn't even say we were acquaintances. We would just say I knew who she was, but she was married. She had a different name, but I knew who she was, and I was like, this is mind blowing. It was totally awesome and an experience that I'll never forget. And boy, I don't think I'll ever have anything to match that.
And for the kids out there that aren't aware, this was in the days before caller ID. So you did just pick up the phone and didn't know who was on the other end.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And unfortunately, it wasn't my Star Trek Enterprise landline phone at the time. It was just a regular landline phone. But the story would have been even better had it have been my Enterprise landline phone. I don't even know if I had it at the time.
It would have been better if your wife picked up the phone and she was the one that answered initially. That would be even better.
Well, this is before she was in the picture. Yeah, this is before she was in the picture. But that would have been as they say in New Orleans, that would have been lagniappe for sure.
Well, John, I will say thank you so much for joining us. This has been, such a fun experience. I mean, I had such a good time with you when we did the fantasy draft on Legacy Trek. My lasting memory of you is you putting up the picture of Sonak and the other crew member dying in the transporter. That was like my lasting memory from that draft. That's
the best Star Trek background to have on Zoom is the transporter accident. It's even better than the Enterprise blowing up. It's so beautifully gory and disgusting and disturbing. Right? It's guaranteed to get a comment and a lull.
Oh, it was great. It was great. Everybody was making fun of me because I was drafting all the dead people. So, but I did get Sonak as my science officer. So
A+ choice.
So obviously, once again, we want to thank you for joining us. Now, where can you be found online, John?
Sure. I'm pretty much everywhere at Trek Profiles, mostly active on Twitter at Trek Profiles. And if you're interested in my Star Trek show, where I interview fans about why we love Star Trek, you can find that also Trek Profiles, wherever you get your audio.
And highly recommended. It is a show that you can listen to. You don't have to have had all the backstory. You can pick right up wherever you are and then binge listen if you want to after that. Mm-hmm. And John also does ask the question about collectibles on every episode. So very, very similar format to us, except he started it. We are looking for more collectors who would like to be featured on the Divine Treasury. And like John, it doesn't matter if you have a small collection or if you have a large collection. We just simply want to talk to you and hear your story.
You can find us on Twitter at divine_treasury and on Instagram with the same handle. We're both on Facebook. Obviously, we can be found popping in and out of Camp Kittimer from time to time. So if you'd like to be on the show, please send us a direct message in any one of these platforms. And please also send us pictures like John was so gracious to do as well.
You can also subscribe to the Trek Geeks Podcast Network YouTube channel, where you can find the audio from our shows, as well as some video from Jamie and I unboxing new pieces from our collection, our treasures from the mail portion of the show, as well. Sometimes you never know what else you might see in there. So check out the Trek Geeks Podcast Network YouTube feed. If you enjoy the Divine Treasury, you can subscribe to the podcast by searching for us in many different areas where you find podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts.
You can also support the Divine Treasury and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network by supporting us on Patreon. Get access to unedited recordings of every episode on the network, as well as other exclusive content and so many other awesome perks.
If you'd like to become a producer on the network or get access to the awesome raw audio that we put out for the Divine Treasury, head over to patreon.com/TrekGeeks.
The Trek Geeks Podcast Network. No one talks Star Trek like we do. We'd also like to thank 5 Year Mission for allowing us to use their awesome music on this show. And collectors, we're talking to you specifically. Did you know that they're writing a song for every episode of the original series? And this is not parody music, but this is content based on the show itself. So go to 5yearmission.net, put some CDs in your cart, because we know in collecting, it's all about the physical media. It's not about the downloadable content. So please pick up year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4, as well as The Trouble with Tribbles and Spock's Brain. Make 5 Year Mission a part of your collection today.
On our next episode, We look forward to talking to a fellow podcaster here on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, Haley Stoddard. We're going to talk to her about her Star Trek collection. Until then, this has been episode 11 of the Divine Treasury. The Divine Treasury, connecting through collecting.
Music for the Divine Treasury is provided by 5 Year Mission. They're writing an original song for each episode of Star Trek. Hear more of their music at 5yearmission.net. The Divine Treasury is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.